Mike Bohn here with Danny Rubenstein from Ruby SC, obviously a big manager in the MMA game, and of course one of your clients on this card, UFC 273, Petr Yan, unifying the bantamweight title, the Aljamain Sterling man. Just tell me, obviously this has been a long time coming, this fight and this rematch. What are you seeing from Petr this week? What's kind of his mindset as far as what you can tell?
Yeah, it's been a year, we prepared for Aljo before. He had to pull out due to injuries, and Peter went and won the interim belt versus Corey Sandhagen, and from then on we kind of knew it was going to be Aljo. There was some talk that it was going to be March, and then it got pushed to April. So it worked out timing wise for Peter. He was able to go to Thailand and get a good camp in there. Finished up his camp 2 weeks in South Florida. He's great. I've honestly never seen him look better. Have a lot of conversations with a lot of people around him, outside of him. Everybody is very impressed by what he's been doing, and especially this camp, and kind of how he's looked this camp. His weight's good. He's no injuries, which is pretty much a first for him. Every other fight he's had some type of injury. The Jimmy Rare fight, he was in the hospital the week before the fight. So everything's always been with Peter very difficult. Getting to the fight. He's always made it there and always performed very well, but the fact that he's healthy now and no injuries is I think it's going to be a good week for him.
Yeah, and I guess one of the challenges, on that point with his corner, right? He wasn't able to get all his cornermen that he had originally planned in for this fight. What exactly happened there? Was that like a moment that, maybe that would rattle some people? Was he just going with the flow, or was there like some stuff there that you guys had to recalculate and figure out?
No, I think it was a little blown out of proportion. It was really just one training partner who couldn't get his visa. Okay. And it, obviously it really wasn't super important. It would have been nice to have him here with Peter to be able to, somebody that's been, it was a wrestling coach or a wrestling training partner. So for him to have him here would have been nice, but it wasn't something that was going to make or break the camp. There was no thoughts of ever pulling out or changing anything, right? So, he went down to Florida 2 weeks early, and he's been working with Artem Levin and Marcos Pahumpa. So, guys that have cornered him before, it's really no different. I think a lot of people had a lot of fun with it online, which we all enjoyed. The O'Malley call out and Henry and, very honestly, Peter just wanted to walk out alone. No corners at all. And then it was like, hey, you need somebody to hold the ice. You need somebody to bring you water. Like, let's do what's right. So I think he's got a surprise for the corner, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well, I'm excited to see that then. And obviously, going back to the first fight and everything, there was a lot of drama. Have you noticed, was there any discussions after that, or just how you guys wanted to handle moving forward, in terms of going into this fight, to just make sure everything is kind of on the same page and, any sort of slip-ups like that don't happen again?
No, we talked about it right afterwards, and he explained kind of what he saw in the position and what he, kind of went through his head that made him think about throwing the knee. He knows it was a mistake, and obviously he's paid a dear price for it over the last year. No, I think he knows the rules. I think, Aljo's had a lot of fun with it, which is fine. It sells the fight. I don't expect there to be any issues this fight. Look, he's a savage, man. He wants to go out there and hurt you, and sometimes, slip-ups arise, right? Basically, his two losses are a point deduction because of a headbutt, which wasn't really, that didn't cost him the fight. That fight went to a draw, and then because ACA wanted somebody to have the belt, they deducted another point, which people don't know the real story of why he lost that fight. And then obviously the Aljo fight. So, you're two mistakes away from being undefeated, and being number one, number two all-time great bantamweight, which I think by the end of his career we'll see him at that number anyway.
Yeah, I've been high on him for such a long time. He's just so freaking talented. It's crazy. Do you feel like, this setback, though, has been, I don't know, in a way maybe good for his career, because there's been so much attention put on this rivalry? I think it's, had people more invested in him and Aljo. Obviously, he lost the belt, but now he's interim champ. He comes in, still gets pay-per-view points, I imagine, for this fight. So, do you think this really hurt him that badly, or can you look at it in a positive way to a degree, like what's happened over the past year?
You look at it career-wise, it would have been nice, for the fight in Abu Dhabi to make a little bit more money with pay-per-view points and being the defending champ. I don't really think it's been that huge of a setback. I think mentally it's been a year of 2 years of always looking at Aljo as the next guy, I think Peter's ready to put that behind him and move on. And, I don't know if it's TJ next. I don't know. Could be O'Malley. I mean, he's been on a good run. I think there's a lot of options for Peter. I don't think one of those options is going up, though. I know a lot of people want him to, maybe challenge for the 45-pound belt. I think 35 is where he's at. I think there are competitors at 35 that he needs to, do a little bit more work in that division, and then we'll see,
Bantamweight is just crazy too, right? It seems like there's an endless, amount of guys coming up and stuff. I would be shocked if there was, no exciting fights for him at any point. He would have to really clear out the division.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next logical fight is TJ, and then after that, if Henry really wants to come back, we'd love to do the Henry fight. If not, if O'Malley can get another win or two in that time, maybe it's Sean O'Malley at that point,
And obviously, Aljamain Sterling is first, though. From your perspective, what's the actual level of disdain between these two? Do you think Piotr actually really doesn't like Aljamain, or is this more of a competitive rivalry?
I don't think they'll ever be friends, but I also don't know if it'll get to George and Colby level. I think they both have a healthy respect for each other as competitors, regardless of what they say when they do interviews. I think that's a lot of fight hype, and I think they've both been good, and I don't want to say classy, that might be the wrong word, but they've both been good about how they've built up the rivalry, and there is a rivalry. I mean, there's no hiding that. I think they both respect each other as a competitor. I don't, personally, they don't have to like each other enough to be friends.
And obviously focus on this fight, but how many more times would you like to see him fight this year? Do you think maybe he gets one more in, two more in if possible?
I think at least one more. Two more would be nice if we can get, maybe a July, August fight and then, the late December card. If not, early next year. I mean, when you're a champ, it's a little bit different. You're always waiting for the next guy, the next challenger, and I don't think 35's a division where they need to search for challengers. They know who they want next, and we know who we want next. So, I think it's just about timing.
Yeah, for sure. And to touch on some of your other clients, obviously, a big roster of people you work with. I want to start with Arman Sarukian. Obviously, he's been on a great run here, had the setback in his debut, I believe, but ever since then, it's just been, absolutely great performances. What do you kind of see for him going forward? I know he wants a big name fight, and I think I saw him going back and forth with a couple other people on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, I think he's 6-1 overall. He's a 5-fight win streak. The last two have been finishes. Obviously, the Joe Alvarez fight was, I think what we really saw Arman can do. He chose not to go back to Russia during this time. He's staying in the U.S. He's been training between Las Vegas, California. He's going to go to Florida for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, him and Gamrot went back and forth a little bit online. Obviously, the fight we want is the Gregor Gillespie fight. But, Gregor's one of those guys. He kind of picks and chooses when he fights, and it sounds like he's not going to be fighting anytime soon. So maybe it's Gamrot, maybe it's Carlos Diego Ferreira. I don't know. He would like somebody in the rankings. I also think it depends on what happens with some of the other guys in the division, what Sean decides to do with the matchups.
Yeah, that makes sense. And since we're here, obviously Khamzat Chimaev is on this card, and a lot of people are talking about a welterweight that maybe even is better than him and Shavkat Rakhmonov. This guy, I mean, just tell me a little bit about what his background and stuff, and how talented you think he is.
I mean, I've said since day one that he was probably one of the most talented kids on our roster. Obviously, he works with Sayat, which all our Russians work with him. Yep. Most of our Russians work with him. So, yeah, I mean, I think Shavkat's super talented. I think he's fought significantly higher level competition, save for Gilbert Burns this weekend, for Khamzat. I think he's fought better competition. I don't think people know him as much because he doesn't speak as much. Obviously he doesn't speak any English. And not having Sayat there in the corner, the last fight kind of hindered that a little bit because there was some slip-ups with the translation and, on the post-fight. And it is what it is, right? Obviously, the hardcores know who he is and know how good he is. I mean, he's huge for the division just like Khamzat is. He's got great striking. He's got, fantastic ground game. I'm super excited for him. We've been offered the Neil Magny fight. We've accepted it. I'm sure Neil will accept that fight. Just about getting the details worked out for it and making sure, Shavkat's taken care of and he beats a guy like Neil Magny and, you're looking at top 5 guys for the rest of his career at that point. So,
Yeah, I was actually going to ask because guys like that are maybe don't have the biggest name but are clearly super dangerous, a great record. It's hard to get those upper tier guys to accept fights, but thank God we have a guy like Neil Magny in that division. Do you think after that though it might still get tricky to get some of these really big names at welterweight who are all seemingly wanting to fight up?
Yeah, I mean, props to Neil Magny. He said yes to literally every guy who's ever been offered to him. And even on Twitter, he was right away to call out and be like, "Hey, I'm game. Let's go." Yeah, I mean, I think if he gets through Neil Magny and does it, in the same fashion he's beaten the other 3 guys that he's fought so far, I think we're going to have real problems getting him booked.
Yeah, should be really interesting. I mean, hopefully that fight gets finalized and everything. That'd be great. Another client of yours that was recently booked was Rafael Fiziev, and he obviously had to pull out of the fight with RDA, had COVID and all that stuff. How's he doing now? What's kind of the latest with him?
Yeah, he's good. He's back in Thailand. He's back to full training. Had a little bout with COVID, and like we all have, I think, at this point. Just kind of, it was unfortunate the timing that, he'd flown in early, had gotten sick, wasn't able to fight. I think for him, we would love to get the RDA fight back. I don't know what's going on. I think that really kind of depends on what Sean decides to do with Dariush and Islam. If Dariush is healthy and they run back the Islam fight, it makes perfect sense to redo RDA and Rafael Fiziev. If not, we'll look for something June, July that makes sense for him. Maybe Gregor's ready to fight at that point. I don't know. Obviously all these guys are kind of just going to circle through each other until you can get some of the, the guys that are just kind of holding their place in the rankings. If they're not going to fight, like either get them out or, let's get some new blood in there.
Yeah. And we're glad to hear that he's feeling better physically. What about like mentally to have to pull out of a fight like that? Obviously, it was such a big opportunity for him. Obviously, these fighters are some of the toughest people and mentally strong in the world. But to like lose out on that, was that something that seemingly was pretty hard for him to deal with?
I think he was disappointed for a couple of days, and he wants to go out there and put on a show for the world. Like you've seen how he fights; everybody loves him. He's obviously funny on Twitter and Instagram and. Yeah, I mean, I think for him it was a little disappointing for a couple of days. He went home and reset, and now he's back in Thailand, and we're just waiting for him to get booked again. So,
and another undefeated fighter, Movsar Abdulov, fighting Dan Ige. That's a big fight, of course, for him. For him to get that type of opportunity, like, what are you kind of expecting out of him in this fight, and what's really his chance to kind of break through in terms of being like a name that people know?
Yeah, I mean, I think people have watched him fight, and they see how talented he is. He's got a motor for days. I think the Ige fight is a perfect matchup for him. Like we've seen in the past, Ige struggles with wrestlers, and I think Movsar can go in there and put a pace on him and get him to the ground and hopefully finish him. And that puts us in a top 6, top 5 conversation at that point. I don't know what Arnold Allen's doing after that, but I think that'd be a good next fight. I think maybe he's kind of earned somebody like a Calvin Kattar or something like that. A little step up. He's been. But he's another one that fights once a year, so if he can be a little bit more active, I think there's a lot more opportunities to be had. But yeah, I mean, I think Movsar is super talented. I don't know if a lot of people know his brother won the Olympic gold medal in Greco-Roman wrestling, so he's got the pedigree, And yeah, it's just about that fight's great, and we're happy for it. I don't know if a main event's been booked for that, but we've told the UFC we're happy to jump into a main event slot if they don't have anything for June 4th.
Interesting. We'll see how that plays out. And last but not least, jumping over to the women's side of the roster, Cynthia Calvillo is going back down to 115. What adjustments does she have to make in order to, make this not just like a one-time cut, but something she can do consistently fighting out this weight class?
Yeah, I mean, I think when she was fighting at 115 before, she was always in the gym, but it wasn't always like the mentality of, this is my life. This is my life. I always got to be training, always got to stay healthy and put the work in. She's now at Syndicate in Las Vegas, works her ass off. She's going to George Capetillo's boxing, also in Las Vegas. So, I think for her, we met with the guys at the PI, made sure that it was healthy for her to go back down to 115. It just kind of made sense. She had, a lot of success at 115, and that was the right decision. I think women, you deal with a little different issues when you're cutting weight. Obviously their menstrual cycles, and a lot of that gets brought on by weight cuts, and it's not super healthy for them to cut weight as much as maybe the men do, or as often or as much weight. So we met with the guys at the PI, and we trust them, and they put her on a nutrition plan, and did all the DEXA scan and the body mass indicator stuff, and made sure it was healthy for her, and they gave her the sign off to go back down to 15. She was offered a fight versus Brianna Van Buren that June 4th card, and Mick called me a couple weeks later and said that Brianna had to pull out. So we're just waiting for another opponent. Hopefully keeps her on that card. She's training for the June 4th date.
Okay, cool. Awesome, man. Well, appreciate all this. Obviously, it seems like a big year ahead for you coming up, and all kind of kicks off this weekend with Petr Yan.